Hey, David, I'm from Australia, and I'm trying to figure out why so many Americans do not vote. Isn't it obvious that it is just the fundamental basic participation in your democracy and that it is the starting point for all political involvement? Yes, yes. For me, I have said many times, I don't believe in this stuff of if you don't vote, you don't get to complain. That seems kind of silly and reductive. But I do think that anybody who cares at all about the country they live in should, as a minimum, be voting in addition to whatever else they are doing. Now, the question of why more people don't vote is a good question. It's easy to say, well, more people don't vote because it's not mandatory. That's not what I think is really the interesting part. The more interesting part to me is what are the reasons that people choose not to vote? And there's a very interesting study of non-voters, and you can find this on the 538 website. And it looked at why voters versus non-voters end up not voting. Rather, it compared the reasons that people who never vote don't vote versus the reasons that people who sometimes vote don't end up voting. One of the reasons that non-voters choose never to vote is they believe that it doesn't matter who wins, nothing will change for people like them. And unfortunately, this is one of those kind of fallacious beliefs. You know, we hear this idea that sometimes people will say, elections really never come down to one vote. So therefore, my vote doesn't matter, so I'm going to stay home. And while it's true that elections rarely come down to one vote, particularly national elections, if everybody who had that thought occur to them stayed home or voted, then you actually would be able to change the outcomes and maybe influence what your day-to-day life is like. So that's a really unfortunate one. One of the reasons it feels like things don't change is so many people aren't voting. If everybody was voting, things would actually change. Another reason that non-voters often don't vote is they believe the system is too broken to be fixed by voting. That's sort of a version of the same thing. And then some folks who believe that because of where they live, their vote doesn't matter, which is a direct critique of the Electoral College. And then lastly, one of the reasons that a lot of non-voters cite for not voting is they're not sure if they can vote, which is really just depressing. There are situations in which you would not be allowed to vote because of a criminal conviction, and we know that that's being dealt with at the state level in a variety of different states. But other than not knowing if you are registered or knowing when you can register, I mean, the idea that people don't vote because they're not sure if they can vote, that's a failure of the system for sure. And then you have to look at which party has an interest in reducing voter turnout. And of course, we know that it's been the Republican Party. We know that the Republican Party has covertly been working on reducing turnout for decades and overtly doing it for at least 10 or 12 years. Check out the Mike Turzai video back in 2012, I believe it is, where he openly says voter ID is going to deliver Pennsylvania to Mitt Romney. So that's just a depressing reality. Now, we could solve a lot of these problems. If we eliminate this idea of voter registration, if it's simply you turn 18 and you're a citizen, you can vote. You don't need to register. That resolves a lot of the issue as to whether one is allowed to vote. That should be done. If we deal with this issue of have I been purged or do I need ID or not, or what, all of these things, when we talk about voter, there's a reason it's called voter suppression. It really does suppress the vote. And then, of course, people feeling like the system is broken. I mean, to some degree, I sympathize with them. And at the same time, I recognize that the lower participation is in elections, the more broken it's going to be. The more the system will be representative of those who choose to vote. So the voting is just the starting point. I get that voting isn't everything, but it is depressing when I see, 52% turnout. Fortunately, we were over 60% this November, but this is a real problem in the United States. I don't know that you really solve it in a deep way simply by making voting mandatory. My birth country of Argentina has mandatory voting. I don't know that it in itself gives us less corrupt outcomes. But that's a bigger issue and probably one for a different day. We've got a great bonus show for you today. Get instant access by becoming a member at joinpakman.com.